What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Wrestling Decoded. And today's list breaks down into three very different categories, even though every single entry technically fits under the same umbrella of things that were never supposed to happen. Some of these are physical accidents nobody could have predicted, moments where real bodies simply didn't cooperate with the script. Some are technical malfunctions that briefly expose the entire illusion of the show to a live audience. And some are actual story decisions that got completely rewritten because the fans reacted in ways the writers never saw coming, forcing an entire company to rebuild its plans around real, unscripted emotion. So let's count down through all three categories, and you tell me by the end which type of unplanned moment you find most fascinating. Let's get into it. If you enjoy these real, behind-the-curtain breakdowns of wrestling's most chaotic moments, that's exactly what this channel does. Go ahead and subscribe before we start. Starting with the physical accidents, the kind that happen when a human body simply refuses to cooperate with what the show needs it to do. Number 10, Andre the Giant, mid-match, against Big John Studd, doing something no wrestler is ever supposed to do in front of a paying, live crowd. He fell asleep. Studd had Andre locked in a headlock for over 8 minutes straight, and somewhere in that stretch, the eighth wonder of the world genuinely dozed off standing there in the ring in front of a full arena of fans who had no idea what they were actually watching unfold. It wasn't a work, and it wasn't a bit. Andre was famously exhausted from an absolutely grueling travel schedule that had him wrestling almost every single night across different cities, and his body simply gave out mid-hold right there in front of everyone. It's one of those moments that sounds too strange to possibly be real, and yet multiple accounts from people who were actually there confirm it happened more than once across his long career. Number 9, Kurt Angle versus Shane McMahon, King of the Ring 2001, a street fight that genuinely went off the rails somewhere in the middle of the match. Instead of scrapping the plan when things stopped going smoothly, the two of them made the decision, live in real time, with no time to call a break or reset, to just keep pushing forward and finish what they'd started. What followed was largely improvised, a match that had already stopped resembling whatever the two men had originally choreographed backstage. It's remembered today as one of the gutsiest displays of in-ring improvisation WWE has ever produced, precisely because neither man bailed on it once things stopped going according to plan, and the finished product still holds up as a genuinely wild, memorable brawl. Number 8, Brock Lesnar and John Cena 2012, in a face-to-face segment ahead of their upcoming Extreme Rules match that was absolutely supposed to turn physical at some point. Lesnar tackling Cena to the mat was the actual plan going in. What wasn't the plan was exactly how hard Lesnar's real MMA-style ground-and-pound punches ended up landing once the two of them hit the canvas. One shot in particular caught Cena squarely enough to genuinely bust him open and leave him bleeding from the mouth on live television in front of millions of viewers. It fit the story WWE was telling perfectly, which is probably why most casual fans never even questioned whether it was intentional. But by every account from people close to the situation, nobody had specifically scripted punches landing quite that stiff, or that legitimately. Here's a question worth sitting with. How many great physical segments in wrestling history do you think actually crossed that same line between planned intensity and something slightly more real than anyone originally intended? Now into the technical malfunctions, where the illusion of the show briefly cracked completely in front of a live audience, exposing just how much of wrestling's magic depends on equipment and choreography working exactly right. Number 7, the 2021 Royal Rumble, held in WWE's unusual pandemic-era Thunderdome setup, featuring a moment where the entire mechanics of the show simply failed on camera in real time. A handcuff spot involving Roman Reigns malfunctioned outright, the cuffs refusing to release properly no matter what anyone tried, leaving the referee with no choice but to abandon his count entirely with absolutely no logical in-story explanation for why he was doing so. For a few genuinely awkward, uncomfortable seconds, the audience watching at home was left staring at real people trying to solve a real technical problem, completely outside the fiction of the match itself, before the show could even attempt to continue forward. Number 6, and this one's genuinely uncomfortable but became historically significant regardless of how embarrassing it was in the moment, CM Punk on SmackDown in December 2013 suffering a real embarrassing bodily mishap during a live segment, publicly acknowledged afterward with a characteristically blunt, self-deprecating tweet. What makes this one land differently than a typical botch is what happened years later. Punk actually cited the incident directly in his subsequent legal dispute with WWE's ringside doctor, turning what had originally been an embarrassing, purely unscripted moment into actual documented evidence in a real medical negligence case. It's a strange reminder that even the smallest unplanned moments in wrestling can end up carrying consequences that extend well beyond the show itself and the night it happened. Number 5, WrestleMania 8. Hulk Hogan versus Sid Justice, one of the most notorious botched finishes in the show's entire history, still discussed by wrestling historians decades later. Sid was supposed to stay down for Hogan's leg drop and lose the match cleanly, as planned. Instead, he kicked out, apparently ahead of schedule, throwing the entire planned ending into immediate chaos in front of a packed arena. The match ended in a disqualification instead of the intended finish, triggered by his manager rushing the ring to create a distraction on the fly, and to make things even messier, Papa Shango, who was supposed to appear immediately afterward to continue the ongoing story, badly missed his entrance cue, leaving the whole closing sequence looking noticeably disjointed and confused on live television in front of a major pay-per-view audience. Quick pause here. Drop a comment on which of these technical or physical breakdowns you think was the hardest for the performers involved to actually recover from in the moment, because personally, I think the WrestleMania 8 finish might be the messiest, most visibly chaotic recovery on this entire list. And now, the category that's arguably the most interesting of all, story decisions that got completely rewritten because of how real fans genuinely reacted, proof that even a heavily scripted, tightly controlled show sometimes has to bend to real, unscripted audience emotion it never planned for. Number 4, Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair, WrestleMania 24. At the climax of their match, Michaels silently mouthed, "I love you," to Flair, just before delivering sweet chin music to officially end Flair's in-ring career on wrestling's biggest stage. Flair himself later confirmed that specific moment was entirely spontaneous, never rehearsed or even discussed beforehand between the two men, just raw, genuine emotion between two performers who understood exactly how much weight that particular moment carried. Flair has called it his single favorite WrestleMania moment of his entire career, precisely because it wasn't written down anywhere on any script page, just felt and delivered in the moment. Number 3, Zack Ryder's rise up the WWE card, which started as a performer taking creative matters entirely into his own hands rather than waiting on the company to script an opportunity for him. Ryder began producing his own YouTube vlog series independently, building a genuine, organic connection with fans through pure comedic self-promotion that had nothing officially to do with WWE's own programming or creative direction. WWE initially tried to redirect that growing momentum elsewhere, positioning John Morrison as the next challenger instead of Ryder, but the fans simply wouldn't let it go, and the chants supporting Ryder kept getting louder and more persistent until they eventually forced a genuine change in plans, culminating in him actually winning the United States Championship from Dolph Ziggler at TLC 2011, a moment nobody in the company's original creative meetings had ever penciled in. Number 2, Kofi Mania in early 2019. Kofi Kingston's push toward a genuine WWE Championship opportunity was never originally part of the plan for that particular year's WrestleMania season at all. But as Kingston kept getting repeatedly denied real opportunities on television in increasingly sympathetic, frustrating fashion, real fan momentum built behind him week after week, growing loud enough and sustained enough that WWE recognized they had something genuinely unplanned but genuinely valuable happening in real time, and adjusted their entire road to WrestleMania specifically around it, giving him the spotlight the audience had already decided he deserved. And number 1, arguably the biggest example of a rewritten story on this entire list, Daniel Bryan's WrestleMania 30 title win. The original creative plan for that show's main event picture didn't actually involve Bryan winning the WWE Championship at all, according to widely reported accounts of how differently things were initially mapped out. But the yes movement that built around him became so loud, so sustained, and so genuinely impossible to ignore across weeks of television that WWE ultimately restructured its entire WrestleMania plan specifically to give fans the ending they'd been demanding for months on end. Bryan overcoming the authority to win the title in one of the most emotionally satisfying, fan-driven moments the show has ever produced. So here's the actual thread connecting all 10 of these across all three completely different categories. Professional wrestling, for as heavily scripted and meticulously choreographed as it genuinely is behind the scenes, still has these breaking points scattered throughout its history, moments where real bodies, real technology, or real audience emotion simply overrides whatever had already been written down on a page beforehand. Sometimes that produces something embarrassing, like a botched finish or a malfunctioning prop exposing the show's own mechanics. Sometimes it produces something genuinely dangerous, like real punches landing far harder than intended. And sometimes, unexpectedly, it produces the single best story the company tells all year, purely because the fans refuse to accept the version that had originally been planned for them behind closed doors. Which category do you find most fascinating? The physical accidents, the technical malfunctions, or the story rewrites driven by real fan reaction? Let me know down in the comments. And if you want more of these deep dives into wrestling's most unplanned, unscripted moments, make sure you're subscribed to Wrestling Decoded. There's plenty more of this still to uncover.